Well, I think it starts with the leadership in helping articulate that for the guys, and then what we're expecting out of the guys, right? We're expecting this. Are we getting that? Are we not getting that? We have guys showing up to player-only meetings late, guys not showing up to player-only meetings. Like, there's a lot that goes into that. Do we have to make this mandatory? Do we not have to make this mandatory? So it's a lot of things of that nature that we got to get cleaned up, and it starts with the little things.
That's Tua Tagovailoa at the podium after the Dolphins loss, talking about leadership. Caroline Fenton, Jason Fitz, Yahoo Sports Daily, and talking about player-only meetings, which is when you talk to guys that play or played in the league, when you get to player-only meeting status, you are on the brink. Like, something needs to change. You're trying to change the tone of something. So, Caroline, when I hear him call out player-only meetings and then call out players not showing up or showing up late and then trying to figure out what's mandatory and what's not mandatory, it just feels to me like Tua right there is going at an entire locker room for the culture that they have and going at the leadership council of players saying, hey, we're not leading. And maybe it's not even we. Maybe it's just they. I don't know who the leadership council is among the players for the Miami Dolphins, but I think Tua just went to the podium and called all of them out, called the entire locker room out. And this is a pretty staggering statement to me.
That felt like, whenever you have, friends in a couple and you can just tell that they're headed toward divorce or headed toward a breakup, they're fighting, they're not hanging out, they're starting sleeping in different bedrooms. It's like, eek, yikes, I don't know how much longer this is going to work out. That's exactly the same kind of feeling and vibe that I got from Tua's press conference. And you say he's calling out the locker room. Yes, in a way, but I think that's a direct reflection of the coach. That's a direct reflection of Mike McDaniel. It starts at the top. And you can say, look, these people are paid millions of dollars to play this game. They're adults. They're grown men. They get paid to show up. You have to show up. Yes, of course, that is their responsibility. But if they're not showing up, if they're not doing the bare minimum, if they're not coming on time, they're not doing the mandatory things, that shows that these grown men that make millions of dollars to do this job don't respect their leadership. Do you think anyone on those Patriots teams didn't show up for mandatory meetings when Bill Belichick was in charge? Do you think Kansas City Chiefs players aren't showing up for mandatory meetings? Of course not, because they have too much respect for their head coaches. The Patriots have too much respect for Bill Belichick. The Chiefs have too much respect for Andy Reid. That if they're not showing up, it's because they don't respect the powers that be. Tua called it out. It's leadership. Yes, it's locker room leadership, which I think is a direct reflection of Tua. The call is coming from inside the house, Tua. But I think it starts at the top as well. If you don't have respect for leadership, if you don't have respect for your head coach, then of course you're not going to show up for meetings. Of course you're going to do the bare minimum, because what's stopping you? So there's no accountability.
It's interesting that you mentioned Tua in that. And I think part of the roster construction failure for the Miami Dolphins, to me, is not understanding exactly who Tua is. And, I've been lucky enough to cover Tua at some capacity since his college days. And I think it's fair to say Tua is fairly quiet as an individual. And that's okay. But people ask all the time, what is it factor? Like, no matter what you do, like, that person has it. What does it mean? To me, it is authenticity and understanding exactly who you are and being exactly who you are. And people gravitate to that. You can be a quiet leader and you can be stoic. You don't have to be a rah-rah guy. You don't have to be that guy. When you are a quarterback and you are quiet, though, I do believe as a roster, you've got to insulate that with some dogs. You got to have some guys in that locker room that are truly your tone setter for accountability and for the way things are going to go. I don't know that that's naturally ever been how Tua is natured. Like, Tua in college was a much different personality than, let's say, Jackson Dart was in college, right? Like, certain guys are boisterous, certain guys are big, and certain guys walk into a locker room and they don't just clap their hands and say the right things. Everybody sort of gravitates to their leadership. You don't have to have that to be a good quarterback. I don't believe you have to have all of that to be a quarterback, but I do believe that your roster has to be constructed to work around this. So when Tua calls out leadership, I think what he's telling you is that, hey, he's not that leader, right? But also I look at it and say, it's never would have been authentic for the Tua that I've been around to be that guy. I think the Dolphins had a responsibility at some point to fill the locker room with the types of personalities that can hold those standards and are that type of person. I just don't know that that's how Tua's natured. So now he's at the podium calling out leadership, which also sort of acknowledges that he's not that leader while also acknowledging that they don't have that. Like, it's all an organizational fail.
It is shocking to me that he even said that. That feels like you're airing some dirty laundry that should not be aired in that form or fashion. I don't have any problem with a team leader. Most of the time, it's a quarterback calling out his team publicly. We need to be better. We need to be holding ourselves accountable, so on and so forth. But that's not what Tua was doing. He wasn't holding his team accountable. He was calling his team out. He was calling out, quote unquote, leadership. So if that's not him, who is it? Because when I ask you, okay, if you ask me the leader in the Chiefs locker room, okay, I think that's Travis Kelce, that's Chris Jones, that's Patrick Mahomes. Who's the leader in the Lions locker room? I think there's a laundry list of guys on that roster that could be considered leaders. Who's the leader in the Dolphins locker room? It's clearly not Tua. He's calling out leadership. He's not calling out himself. It's not the head coach. It can't be the head coach. If the head coach is your only leader in that locker room, you have roster issues. And it's clearly not Mike McDaniel. Who is it? Who is the leader? Who is the moral compass in this Miami Dolphins locker room? I'll answer that for you. They don't have one. That's why this team is such a train wreck.
That's when you talk about the bad teams in the NFL. I think you've just sort of, like, Tua has sort of stumbled on this discovery of leadership that leads you to the, like, all bad teams. Not all bad teams, but most bad teams. Like, we watched Garrett Wilson go nuts on the sideline for the Jets, and I'm asking myself, well, who's the real leader right now? Like, who is that guy? Like, who is the guy in Miami that's the leader? Who's the guy in Tennessee right now that's really a leader? Who's the guy? Like, you can go up and down. And even for some of the bad teams, like, if you want to look at the Browns and the Raiders, they've got one defensive player on both of those teams that's trying to be a leader. I don't think that one guy can do that. So maybe that's all part of the flaw. But then what do you do? Like, the Dolphins are going to play the Browns this weekend. For the loser of that game, especially if it's Miami, like, at some point, the loser of that game has to just acknowledge their season is over. But I don't know that the season's not already over for both of them. Like, the Dolphins are 1-5. They had a lead with under a minute to go, and instead of taking any positive from it, it only gets worse in the post-game press conference. Like, the Dolphins' season is over. The Browns' season is over. But for the loser of this team, of this game coming up, you got to wonder, do they have to look at it and say, do we need organizational changes? If it's the Dolphins, maybe.
Mm-hmm. If it's the Dolphins, yes. Losing to the Browns, I think, has to be the last straw. Losing to Dylan Gabriel, who's still kind of settling in, figuring out who he is as a starter in this league. The Browns are figuring out if he's a starter in this league. Like, the Browns, there's just not a whole lot of good to hold on to. But at least if you're a Browns fan, you can justify it and say the season is lost because we're trying to figure out who our future quarterback is. There is value in figuring out that position. For the Dolphins, though, you lose to the Browns. What do you have to hold on to? Tua is who he is. If you want to move on from Tua, you're going to be in cap hell for the next several years. And maybe cap hell is better than being quarterbacked by Tua Tagovailoa. Like, that's where the Dolphins are right now. There is no optimism that I feel like the Browns have just at least a shred of with having a young quarterback, of, having a player like Myles Garrett, having at least, it feels like, a little bit of direction in that franchise, in that clubhouse. But if you're the Dolphins, you don't feel optimistic about your head coach. You do not feel optimistic about your quarterback. I don't know how many pieces on that roster you really feel great about. And you lose to the Browns? Well, now you're in doo-doo land. You're already in doo-doo land. But now you're the mayor of doo-doo land.
Look, for the Dolphins, it feels like change is inevitable because it feels like there's a mutiny. Browns fans, I've talked to over a dozen people that either cover the Browns nationally or locally to try and get a sense. I can't find a single person in the entire business of covering the Browns that truly believes, that's plugged in, that believes Stefanski's seat is even remotely hot. So change is not coming for the Cleveland Browns. I don't think so. They got young players that are trying to develop. I think the Browns are going to be just fine. The Dolphins, man, this just feels like this is yet another crack in the armor of whatever Miami is building.